Rhina's ship trembled violently as alarms blared inside the cockpit. Sparks flew from the control panel as she struggled to regain control. The small scout vessel had been hit by a solar flare and now its systems were failing one by one. Come on, hold together, she muttered, gripping the controls tightly. Her heart pounded as the planet below grew larger on the screen. Earth, a primitive world according to the records of her people, the Z-variants. They had observed it from a distance, but direct contact was strictly forbidden. Humans were seen as unpredictable, wild, and dangerous, but now she had no choice. The ship burst through the atmosphere, flames licking at its sides. As it spiraled downward, Rhina braced herself. A crash was inevitable. She closed her eyes and prepared for impact. The ship slammed into a dense forest, trees snapping like twigs under the force. Metal groaned as it skidded to a stop, leaving a trail of destruction behind. Smoke filled the air. Rhina coughed, her head throbbing from the force of the landing. She unstrapped herself and checked the ship's status. It was beyond repair. She was stranded. Panic crept into her mind, but she pushed it away. She was a trained scout. She had survived worse, but she needed shelter. She needed to avoid the humans. Grabbing a small translator device and a survival kit, she forced open the damaged door and stepped outside. The air was fresh, filled with the scent of trees and damp earth. It was strange but pleasant. Then she heard its footsteps. Her heart pounded as she turned. A figure stood at the edge of the clearing, staring at her with white eyes. A human male. He was tall and strong-looking with messy brown hair and a rough beard. His clothes were simple, worn jeans and a jacket. He had a bag slung over his shoulder as if he had been hiking, but now all his attention was on her. For a moment, neither of them moved. Rhina slowly reached for her energy blade, ready to defend herself if needed. The human raised his hands. Hey. Easy there, he said, his voice calm but curious. Are you okay, Ral's translator clicked, repeating his words in her language. She hesitated. He didn't seem aggressive, but she knew how dangerous humans could be. She had read the reports. They fought wars. They were unpredictable. Still, she needed help. I am unheard, she finally said, her voice shaky. The human blinked in surprise. You can talk. He took a cautious step closer. You're an alien, aren't you? Rhinella stiffened. This was not how first contact was supposed to happen. She had been trained for stealth, not conversation, but there was no point in denying the obvious. Yes, she admitted. The human let out a short laugh, shaking his head. Wow, this is insane. He looked at the smoking wreck behind her. That's your ship, right? You crash landed. She nodded. My ship is damaged beyond repair. He scratched his chin, thinking, well, that's a problem. Ryla's eyes narrowed. Are you going to capture me? She asked cautiously. The human frowned. What? No, why would I do that? She tilted her head, confused. Your kind, you see aliens as a threat. He laughed again, but it wasn't unkind. Lady, I don't know what stories you've been told, but trust me, I'm not turning you in. The government would probably lock you in some lab, and that doesn't sit right with me. Rhinella stared at him. This human was not acting like the reports said he would. He seemed kind. He extended his hand. I'm Daniel. She hesitated before responding. Rhinella. Daniel grinned. Well, Rhinella, I think you need help. Lucky for you, I know these woods pretty well. He glanced at the sky. Come on, it'll be dark soon. You don't want to be out here alone. Rhinella looked at him, then at her ruined ship. She had no other options. With a deep breath, she stepped forward. Maybe humans were not as wild as she had been taught, or maybe, just maybe, they were even wilder, but in ways she never expected. Daniel sat by the fire watching Rhinella as she curiously examined a piece of bread. Her violet eyes studied it like it was an alien object, which, to be fair, it was too. She sniffed it, turned it over in her three-fingered hand, then took a hesitant bite. Her expression shifted from suspicion to surprise. This not bad, she said in broken English, her voice soft but firm. Daniel chuckled. See, told you it's good. Rhinella had only been on Earth for a few days, but Daniel had already learned one thing. She was both incredibly intelligent and frustratingly stubborn. She wasn't like anything he had ever seen before. Her skin had a faint blue tint, almost shimmering in the firelight, and her silver hair was short and layered in a way that made her look sharp and fierce. Despite being an alien, she wasn't terrifying. If anything, she was fascinating. She looked at him with narrowed eyes. Why help me? Daniel hesitated. How was he supposed to explain? He had found her injured in the woods, her strange spacecraft half buried in the ground. At first, he thought it was some kind of military experiment gone wrong, but when he saw her bleeding, weak and barely conscious, his instincts kicked and he couldn't just leave her there. You needed help, he said simply. I don't leave people behind. She studied him for a long moment before nodding. Strange, Daniel raised an eyebrow. Strange, she pointed at him. Humans primitive, violent, many in my world say humans not think only fight. Daniel smirked. Well, we do fight. Sometimes, but we also help. He tapped his head, and we think a lot. Ryanella tilted her head considering his words, then suddenly she mimicked his gesture, tapping her own forehead. Think, but different. Daniel laughed. He wasn't sure if she was mocking him or agreeing with him. Either way, it was progress. The challenge of communication over the next few days, they struggled to understand each other. Rhina's English was limited, but she was a fast learner. She practiced new words every day, repeating them with a determined expression. Daniel also tried to learn some of her language, though it was much harder. The sounds were strange, sharp, and almost musical. Whenever he tried, she would shake her head and smirk. Your tongue wrong shape, she teased. Hate on trying, he said, pretending to be offended. Still, they found ways to communicate. Rinnell was fascinated by Earth's plants and animals. She often asked about the names of trees, insects, and birds, pointing at them with curiosity. What this? She asked, pointing at a squirrel that was watching them from a tree. That's a squirrel. She narrowed her eyes. Squirrel fast. Like small hunter, Daniel laughed. Not really, more like a food thief. She watched the squirrel scurry up a tree and nodded. Clever thief, he had to admit. She saw the world in a way he never did. A new kind of strength. Ranala wasn't just smart, she was strong. Despite her injuries, she moved with a natural grace, her body built for agility. One morning, Daniel found her standing near the river, stretching her arms toward the sky. What are you doing? He asked. She turned to him, her silver hair catching the sunlight. Training for what? She didn't answer. Instead, she crouched slightly, then leaped into the air far higher than any human could. She twisted midair and landed softly, barely making the sound. Dangle whistled. Dan, I mean wow, she smirked. Your body heavy, not made to move like this. Gee, thanks, he muttered. Still, he was impressed. Her body was built for movement, her reflexes sharp. If she hadn't been injured when he found her, she could have easily outrun or overpowered him. She walked up to him, tilting her head. But you strong, two different way. Oh yeah, she nodded. You fight to protect, no claws, no speed, but still fight. That strange. Daniel grinned. Well, I'm full of surprises. A growing connection. As the days passed, something changed between them. The awkwardness faded, replaced by an understanding that didn't need words. They hunted together, built shelters together, and learned from each other. One night, as they sat by the fire, Ranala looked up at the sky. Her home was somewhere out there, millions of miles away. Daniel could see the sadness in her eyes. You miss your people? He asked. She nodded. Yes, but this not bad. She glanced at him. Not alone? Daniel smiled. Yeah, not alone. In that moment, he realized something. Rhina wasn't just another lost traveler. She was his lost traveler, and maybe, just maybe, they weren't so different. After all, Daniel sat near the fire, sharpening a wooden spear. It wasn't much, but it helped with hunting small animals across from him. Ryan was busy examining a piece of metal from her crashed ship. Her violet eyes glowed softly in the dim light as she ran her fingers over the broken edges. Can you fix it? Danielle asked, glancing up. Reynolds sighed, shaking her head. No, too damaged. She dropped the metal with a frustrated huff. Ship needs signal. Daniel understood. She had been trying to repair her communication device for days, but without proper tools, it was hopeless. She was stranded here. Just like him in a way. You really want to leave, huh? He asked, poking the fire with a stick. She looked at him, tilting her head. Home far waiting. Daniel nodded. He had known from the start that she wouldn't stay forever. She had a life beyond Earth, beyond this little patch of wilderness they had called home for weeks now, but for some reason the thought of her leaving made his chest feel heavy. Ranala seemed to notice his change in mood. She studied him for a moment before speaking. You know, family? Daniel hesitated. Not really. My parents passed away years ago. No siblings, no one waiting for me. Rhina's expression softened. You alone? Yeah, I guess so. A silence fell between them. The crackling fire was the only sound between them, filling the empty space where words couldn't. Then, to his surprise, Rhinalot reached out and placed a hand on his. Her fingers were slightly cooler than his, but the touch was warm. You not alone now? She said softly. Daniel looked at her, surprised. She wasn't just saying it to comfort him, she meant it, and for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel alone. A dangerous night. Later that night, a low growl echoed through the trees. Daniel's instincts kicked in immediately. He grabbed his spear and stood up, scanning the darkness. What that? Ryanola whispered, standing beside him. Something big, he muttered. He had been in these woods long enough to know the sound of a predator, A pair of glowing eyes appeared between the trees followed. By another and another, a pack of large wolf-like creatures crept closer there. Fur bristling under the moonlight, their teeth gleamed as they growled muscles. Tense ready to attack, Daniel tightened his grip on the spear. Stay behind me. But Raynala stepped forward. Instead, her silver hair shimmered as she raised her arms and let out a sharp, unfamiliar sound. A high-pitched vibrating hum. The creatures froze, ears twitching. Then something incredible happened. The lead wolf hesitated, its aggression fatting it. Let out a soft whimper before slowly backing away. One by one, the others followed, disappearing into the darkness. Daniel let out a breath. He didn't realize he was holding. What was that? Raynala turned to him, a small smirk on her lips. Zelvarian sound control weak. Mine's. Daniel let out a laugh. Remind me never to make you mad, she chuckled, shaking her head. You different strong mind, cannot control. He smiled at that. Good to know. Unspoken feelings. As the night went on, Daniel found himself watching Renal a lot more closely. She wasn't just some stranded alien. She was strong, intelligent, and fiercely independent, but she also had a kindness in her that he hadn't seen in a long time, and somewhere along the way he had stopped seeing her as just an alien. She caught him staring. What? Daniel hesitated before speaking. You ever thought about staying? Raynala blinked in surprise. Staying here? Yeah, he said. I mean, I know you have a home out there, but what if we made a home here? She looked away, her expression unreadable. I do not know. Daniel nodded slowly. He knew it was a long shot. She had a whole life beyond this place, and he was just a simple human. What could he offer her? But then Rhina did something unexpected. She reached out and took his hand again, this time holding it a little longer. We see. Daniel smiled. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either, and for now that was enough. The night was peaceful, but Raynala couldn't sleep. She lay on the soft grass, staring up at the endless sky. Somewhere out there, her home planet Zelvaria waited for her. Yet when she thought about leaving, something inside her hesitated. She turned her head slightly and glanced at Daniel. He was asleep beside the fire, his face relaxed, his breathing steady. He had saved her, protected her, and taught her about this strange, wild planet, but more than that, he had shown her kindness. Her heart felt different now. Suddenly, a sharp beeping sound broke the silence. Rhina's eyes widened. She sat up quickly, searching for the source. Her communicator, damaged but still functional, was flashing weakly. A voice crackled through. Raynala, do you copy? This is Commander Valen. We have received your emergency signal. Are you safe? Rhina's breath caught in her throat. Rescue had finally come. The choice to leave. Daniel stirred and woke up. What's going on? He asked, rubbing his eyes. Raynala swallowed hard. My people, they found me for a moment, Daniel said. Nothing. Then he forced a smile. That's great, you can go home now. She looked at him, trying to find the right words. Yes, but she hesitated. Did she really want to leave? Daniel took a deep breath and stood up. This is what you've been waiting for, right? You should go. Rila saw the sadness in his eyes. Her chest tightened. She had never felt this way before, torn between two worlds. Before she could respond, a bright blue light filled the forest. A massive ship hovered above them, its sleek silver surface gleaming under the moonlight. A transport pod descended, landing softly on the grass. The door slid open, revealing two tall, armored Zelvirian soldiers. Lady Rhina, one of them said, your mother is waiting. Meeting the family. The journey back to Zelvaria was silent. Rhina sat in the transport, staring at the unfamiliar sight of Daniel on an alien ship. He looked, hence his hands clenched into fists. When they arrived at the grand city of Luveth, everything felt overwhelming. The tall, crystal-like towers shimmered in the air, and the streets were filled with well-dressed Zelvirians who all turned to stare at the strange creature walking beside Raynala. Daniel felt like an animal in a zoo. The aliens whispered and pointed at him, their expressions filled with curiosity and disgust. Then they reached the palace. At the top of the stairs, a tall, elegant woman stood waiting. Her silver hair was braided, and her violet eyes were sharp with authority. Mother Rhina said softly. Her mother, High Counselor Solara, stepped forward, her gaze locking onto Daniel. What is this? She asked, her voice cold. Raynala took a deep breath. This is Daniel. He saved my life. Seller's lips pressed into a thin line. A human? You brought a wild creature into our home. Daniel clenched his jaw. He had expected this reaction, but it still stung. He is not wild, Rhina argued. He is brave, strong, intelligent. Solara shook her head. Daughter, you have spent too long on that primitive planet. You forget who we are. She turned to the guards. Take the human to the research chambers. We must study him before we decide what to do with him. Dance. No. Raynala stepped in front of Daniel. He is my guest. He will not be treated like some test Subject Salar's eyes narrowed. You are speaking dangerously, child. Ranala lifted her chin. I know what I am saying. I will not let you harm him. The tension in the air was thick. Daniel looked at Branala, surprised he had never seen her stand up to her own people like this. Finally, Silara, very well, he may stay for now, but he will be watched closely. Daniel let out a slow breath. He wasn't sure what was coming next, but one thing was clear: he was in for the fight of his life. And Ranala was on his side. Daniel sat stiffly in a large glowing chamber inside the Zelvarian palace. The walls pulsed with soft blue light and strange floating symbols flickered in the air. Across from him, several high-ranking Zelvarian officials sat in elegant chairs, their violet eyes locked onto him. Like a rare animal, Ranala stood beside him, her shoulders tense. She had argued all night with her mother, High Counselor Solera, but in the end her mother had agreed to one thing: Daniel could stay, but he had to prove himself human. An elder male Zelvarian finally spoke, his voice deep and smooth. You are an unknown species to us, primitive, weak. His sharp gaze studied Daniel carefully. And yet Rhina claims you are worthy. Daniel shifted slightly. I don't know what you mean by worthy, but I'm not weak. A few Zvarians scoffed, their amusement clear. Celera leaned forward. If you wish to remain here, you must pass the trials, a test of intelligence, strength, and survival. If you fail, she paused, her voice cold, you will be sent back to Earth alone. Daniel's heart pounded, but he kept his face calm. He glanced at Ranala, who gave him a small nod. He could see the worry in her eyes, but also trust. He exhaled and looked back at the council. Fine, I'll do it. Trial 1, the test of intelligence. The first trial was a test of problem-solving. Daniel was led to a massive chamber filled with shifting holographic puzzles. Strange alien symbols moved around him, changing patterns, floating in the air like a living maze. A robotic voice spoke, solve the sequence before time runs out. Daniel scratched his head. Great, an alien IQ test. The Zvarians watched from a distance, whispering among themselves. They expected him to fail. Humans, after all, were not known for advanced intelligence in their eyes, but Daniel had something they didn't expect: creativity. Instead of analyzing the symbols logically like a Zelvirian would, he thought outside the box. He noticed patterns in the glowing shapes, saw how they responded to touch, and experimented with different combinations. Within minutes, he had figured out the trick. The final symbol locked into place. A loud chime echoed through the chamber. The council members sat up, surprised. Rianella smiled. He did it. Trial 2, the test of strength. The second trial was a physical challenge. Daniel was taken to an arena where he faced a towering formed Zelvarian warrior named Chorus. The alien was nearly twice his size, covered in sleek armor. Daniel swallowed hard. Great, just what I needed. An A-toot muscle monster. A voice echoed. Victory is achieved by forcing your opponent to the ground. The moment the trial began, Chorus charged. He was fast, powerful, and clearly skilled in combat. Daniel barely dodged the first strike, feeling the wind rush past his face. For several minutes, he avoided Chorus attacks, but it was exhausting. He wasn't as strong or fast, but then he remembered something Ranala had told him: you think differently. Instead of fighting Chorus head-on, Daniel used his human adaptability. He dodged faked movements and led the warrior into overextending his attacks. Then at the perfect moment, Daniel used Chorus's own momentum against him, grabbing his arm, twisting his body, and sending the giant crashing into the ground. Silence filled the arena. Daniel stepped back, panting. I win, right? Chorus groaned but nodded. You fight smart, the council murmured among themselves, clearly impressed. Trial 3, the test of survival. For the final trial, Daniel was taken to a remote part of Zelvaria, a wild jungle filled with dangerous creatures. The test survived for 1 week alone. No weapons, no supplies. Ranala pulled him aside before he left. Be careful, she whispered. The creatures, they are not like Earth's. Daniel smirked. I survived Earth's wild animals. How bad can it be? Rhina didn't look convinced, but before she could say more, he was transported into the jungle. For the first few days, Daniel struggled. The environment was different: the air, the gravity, even the plants. Some creatures hunted in complete silence, some had venomous spines. He had to learn fast, but humans were built for survival. Daniel used his instincts, found water sources, set traps, and learned the patterns of the wildlife. By the final day, he had not only survived, he had adapted. When the retrieval ship arrived, they found him sitting by a fire, roasting an alien bird he had caught. He grinned at the shocked faces of the Zelarians. Took you long enough, a human among aliens. Back at the palace, Daniel stood before the council once more. Solaris stared at him for a long moment, then finally she spoke. Against Expectations you passed. Daniel walked through the grand hallways of the Zevarian palace, his boots echoing against the smooth, glowing floor. He had passed the trials, proving his intelligence, strength, and survival skills, but even though he had earned his right to stay, not everyone was happy about it. The high-ranking Zelvarian still gave him suspicious looks. Servants whispered behind his back. Some warriors looked at him as if they were still waiting for him to fail, but none of that mattered to Daniel. He wasn't here for them, he was here for her. Ranala stood at the edge of a tall balcony looking out at the city. Below, the twin moons of Zelvaria cast a silver glow over the towering crystal-like buildings. Daniel walked up beside her. You okay? She sighed. It is difficult. My mother, the council, the people, they do not accept easily. Daniel smirked. I noticed a few of them look like they want to throw me back to Earth. Rilla turned to him, her expression serious. They might, if we are not careful. Danielle frowned. What do you mean? She hesitated. The council did not just let you stay. They are watching. They believe our connection is dangerous. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Dangerous? Why? Rinnell bit her lip, looking down. Because I am not just anyone, Daniel. I am next in line to rule, the daughter of the High Counselor. Daniel blinked. He had known Renala was important, but royalty, that was new. Okay, he said slowly, and she turned to him. I serious, and you are human. The word hung in the air. Daniel exhaled, rubbing his neck. He knew there was tension between him and the Zarians, but he hadn't realized just how deep it went. So what happens now? He asked. Renala took a deep breath. We must prove that we belong together, that you are not just an outsider. Daniel chuckled. Great, more proving myself. But before Rhaenella could respond, a deep voice interrupted. You should not be here, human. A new rival. Daniel turned to see a tall Zelvirian warrior approaching. His silver armor gleamed, and his piercing violet eyes locked onto Daniel with clear dislike. Rhaenalla straightened. Tyrion the warrior crossed his arms. You disgrace your people, Rolla, bringing this into our home. Daniel raised an eyebrow. This has a name. Tyrion ignored him. Your mother has been too kind, but the people are not blind. They see what you're doing, and they do not approve. Riddleist expression hardened. It is not their choice. Tyrion scoffed. You think the council will allow a human to stand beside you, to be your equal? His eyes darkened. You are a leader of our people, Rhaena, and leaders do not take weak mates. Daniel clenched his fists. He had already proved himself once, but it seemed he would have to do it again. Rhaenalla stepped between them. Enough. This is not your concern, Tyrion smirked. Oh, but it is, because soon the council will decide, and when they do, the human will be sent away. He turned, walking away with a confident stride. Daniel sighed. Well, he seems fun. Rhaenalla